The sound of a gunshot echoed through the park, followed by a child's terrified scream. In that split second, two families from opposite worlds were forever bound by a single act of courage. If you're wondering how a struggling single father ended up in the hospital bed of the city's most exclusive medical center, with the CEO of Meridian Enterprises holding his hand and promising him the world, stay with me. This is a story about how fate can change everything in the blink of an eye. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful true stories that remind us of the unexpected heroes walking among us every day. Michael Reeves never considered himself special. At 34, he was just trying to keep his head above water. 3 years ago, his wife Eliza had died after a brief battle with an aggressive form of cancer, leaving him alone to raise their daughter, Sophie. The medical bills had drained their modest savings, forcing Michael to sell their small suburban home and move into a cramped two-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of the city. Every morning, Michael would wake up at 5:30 a.m. to prepare breakfast and lunch for Sophie before dropping her off at school. He worked as a mechanic at a local garage during the day and picked up evening shifts as a rideshare driver 3 nights a week. The other evenings, he helped Sophie with her homework, trying his best to fill the void left by her mother's absence. Despite the exhaustion that had become his constant companion, Michael never complained. Sophie was his world, and he would do anything to give her a good life. Across town, in a penthouse overlooking the city skyline, lived Jonathan Mercer, the founder and CEO of Meridian Enterprises, a technology company valued at billions. At 42, Jonathan had everything money could buy, except time with his 8-year-old son, Ethan. His wife, Vanessa, had left him 2 years ago, tired of competing with his work for attention. The divorce had been messy and public, with Vanessa moving to Europe with her new partner. Jonathan had fought hard for custody of Ethan and won, but he struggled to connect with his son, often delegating parenting duties to a rotation of nannies and household staff. On Saturdays, however, Jonathan made it a point to spend the day with Ethan. It was their ritual, a way for him to assuage his guilt and convince himself he wasn't failing as a father. They would visit museums, attend sporting events, or simply walk through the park near their luxury high-rise. These outings were often awkward, filled with stilted conversations and long silences. Jonathan would check his phone constantly, unable to fully disconnect from work, while Ethan would retreat further into himself, his eyes reflecting a loneliness that mirrored his father's. It was on one such Saturday in early spring when Michael decided to take Sophie to the same park. Money was tight that month, the car needed repairs, and Sophie had outgrown her winter clothes. But the park was free, and the weather was perfect for flying the kite they had built together from scraps in the garage. "Higher, Dad, higher." Sophie squealed with delight as the colorful kite danced in the breeze. Her laughter was infectious, and for a moment, Michael forgot about the stack of bills waiting at home and the extra shifts he needed to pick up. Not far from them, Jonathan sat on a bench, watching Ethan half-heartedly feed the ducks by the pond. The boy's shoulders were slumped, his movements mechanical. Jonathan sighed, wondering when things had become so difficult between them. He was about to suggest they get ice cream when his phone rang, an important investor calling from Tokyo. He hesitated for a moment before answering, turning away from his son as he discussed profit margins and market projections. Ethan, used to his father's divided attention, wandered further along the pond's edge, tossing the last pieces of bread to the eager ducks. He noticed a colorful kite soaring above and followed its path, mesmerized by its freedom. Without realizing it, he had walked quite far from his father. It happened so quickly. A man in a dark hoodie approached Ethan, his movements purposeful and predatory. He grabbed the boy's arm roughly, whispering something that made Ethan's face drain of color. The man's other hand reached inside his jacket, revealing the glint of metal. Michael, who had been helping Sophie untangle her kite string, looked up just in time to see the scene unfolding. Years later, he wouldn't be able to explain what made him act. Perhaps it was instinct, or perhaps it was the thought that it could have been Sophie in danger. Without hesitation, he sprinted toward them. "Run, kid!" Michael shouted, his voice cutting through the peaceful park atmosphere like a siren. Ethan, startled by the command, broke free from the man's grip and ran. The kidnapper, realizing his plan was falling apart, pulled out his gun. Michael lunged forward, tackling the man just as the weapon discharged. Pain exploded in Michael's chest, but his only thought was of the boy's safety and of Sophie, who was screaming somewhere behind him. Jonathan, who had been engrossed in his call, heard the gunshot and his son's terrified cries. He dropped his phone and ran toward the commotion, his heart pounding with fear. The sight that greeted him would be forever etched in his memory, his son, safe but trembling, and a stranger lying on the ground, blood seeping through his shirt, while a young girl knelt beside him, sobbing. "Daddy, please don't leave me," Sophie begged, her small hands pressing against her father's wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "Please, Daddy, I need you." Jonathan knelt beside them, his own hands joining Sophie's in their desperate attempt to save Michael's life. "Help is coming," he assured them, having already called emergency services. "Stay with us, please. My son, you saved my son." As consciousness slipped away from Michael, his last thought was of Sophie and who would take care of her if he didn't make it. The darkness claimed him before he could find an answer. The next 72 hours were a blur of emergency surgeries, hospital corridors, and whispered consultations among doctors. Michael had been shot in the chest, the bullet narrowly missing his heart but causing significant damage to his lung and several blood vessels. The prognosis was uncertain, the medical team cautious in their assessments. Sophie refused to leave her father's side, sleeping in a chair next to his bed, her small face marked by fear and exhaustion. It was Jonathan who ensured she had food, clean clothes, and anything else she needed. He had moved them to the best hospital in the city, using his influence to secure the top surgical team for Michael. He sat with Sophie during the long hours of waiting, listening as she told him about her father, how he worked 2 jobs to support them, how he never missed her school performances despite his exhaustion, how he still made pancakes in the shape of animals on Sunday mornings, just like her mom used to do. For the first time in years, Jonathan was forced to slow down and truly see someone else's life. He was humbled by the realization that this man, who had so little in material terms, had given so much, not just to his own daughter but to a stranger's son. The contrast with his own life, filled with wealth but emotionally barren, was stark and uncomfortable. When Michael finally regained consciousness, weak but stable, Jonathan was there. The 2 men, from worlds that rarely intersected, looked at each other in silence for a long moment. "Thank you," Jonathan finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved my son's life. I don't know how I can ever repay you." Michael, his voice barely above a whisper, replied, "I just did what anyone would do." "Is Sophie okay?" "She's fine. She's getting some food with Ethan in the cafeteria. She's an incredible kid." A ghost of a smile touched Michael's pale lips. "She's my whole world." As the days passed and Michael's condition improved, Jonathan became a constant presence in the hospital room. He learned about Michael's struggles, the medical debt from his wife's illness, the 2 jobs that barely covered their expenses, the dreams he had put aside to focus on survival. Jonathan saw in Michael everything he had lost in his pursuit of success: authenticity, selflessness, and a deep capacity for love. For Sophie and Ethan, an unexpected friendship blossomed amidst the sterile hospital environment. They shared stories, played games, and found comfort in each other's company. Ethan, usually reserved and quiet, came alive around Sophie, her resilience and optimism drawing him out of his shell. And Sophie, facing the possibility of losing her only parent, found strength in Ethan's steady presence and understanding. One evening, as the children dozed off in the corner of the hospital room, Jonathan made a decision. He approached Michael's bed, his expression serious. "I want to help you," he said. "Not just with the medical bills, but with everything. A new home, a better job, Sophie's education, whatever you need. Michael's initial reaction was pride and resistance. He had always managed on his own, never asking for handouts. But as he looked at his sleeping daughter, he realized that his pride wasn't worth her future. Still, he was cautious. "Why would you do that?" he asked. Jonathan's answer was simple and honest. "Because you've shown me what really matters. I've spent years building a company, accumulating wealth, but I've failed at the most important job, being a father. You, with so much less, have given your daughter everything that truly counts. I want to learn from you, and I want to help you give Sophie the opportunities she deserves." It wasn't an easy transition. Michael struggled with accepting help, with the sudden shift in their circumstances. Jonathan had to learn patience and humility, to recognize that his money couldn't solve everything. But slowly, a genuine friendship formed between the two men, built on mutual respect and a shared commitment to their children's happiness. Jonathan offered Michael a position at Meridian Enterprises, not as charity but because he recognized Michael's untapped potential and work ethic. Michael, who had always had a knack for problem-solving and mechanics, thrived in the company's research and development department, eventually leading a team that developed innovative solutions for sustainable energy. Sophie and Ethan grew up together, their bond strengthening over the years. The two families became intertwined, spending holidays together, supporting each other through challenges, and celebrating successes. Jonathan learned to be present for his son, to put down his phone and truly listen. Michael found a balance between work and family, no longer having to choose between providing for Sophie and being there for her. 10 years after that fateful day in the park, Michael stood in the audience at Sophie's high school graduation, his chest swelling with pride as she delivered the valedictorian speech. Beside him sat Jonathan, who had become like a brother to him, and Ethan, now a confident young man preparing for college. "Life can change in an instant," Sophie said from the podium, her voice strong and clear. "One moment, one decision, one act of courage can set in motion a chain of events that transforms not just your own life, but the lives of everyone around you. My father taught me that bravery isn't about being fearless, it's about doing what's right even when you're terrified. And sometimes, when you least expect it, the universe responds to that courage in ways you could never imagine." As applause filled the auditorium, Michael caught Jonathan's eye. No words were needed between them. They both understood the profound truth in Sophie's words. Their lives had been rewritten by a single moment of crisis and courage, proving that sometimes, the most valuable things in life come from the most unexpected places. That day in the park had taught them all that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or business success, but in the connections we forge, the love we share, and the courage we find to put others before ourselves. It was a lesson neither man would ever forget, and one they made sure to pass on to their children. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Remember, heroes don't always wear capes, sometimes they're just ordinary people making extraordinary choices in moments that matter. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that a single act of kindness can change everything.